Chances are you will read the story to your kids this Christmas season or see it in person or on TV. A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens is timeless. But 1 year before he even thought about the story of Scrooge and the true meaning of Christmas, he came to Louisville and walked our streets. Then he wrote a review about it. As I learned, despite what he said, we were also home to one of his biggest fan clubs.
Last night, my comrade took you traveling through time.
It's a holiday must in Louisville. The Actors Theater portrayal of the 175-year-old story of Ebenezer Scrooge.
I'm a head coach.
A Christmas Carol, written by Charles Dickens and published in December of 1843. Actors is home to America's second longest running stage production of the beloved story about the true Christmas spirit. And 1 year before Dickens even thought about Marley's ghost or Tiny Tim, he was right here, walking the streets of Louisville.
Maybe we can claim that Louisville and Kentucky was part of his inspiration.
At age 29, Dickens was one of the biggest stars in the world.
On the heels of Oliver Twist and things like that, he had become a literary sensation. And so he was quite the celebrity in America.
Jim Holmberg, the curator of collections at Louisville's Filson Historical Society,
that's right,
has unearthed a treasure trove of Dickens' connections to Louisville during his brief visit. What he said about the River City.
The buildings are smoky and blackened from the use of bituminous coal.
In 1842, Charles Dickens of England had decided to tour America and write about it. He started in Boston and was mobbed by fans. This map shows his route that led him to Louisville, KY. And right off the steamboat, early signs of trouble.
As he said, it seemed to be a nice, friendly city. The buildings were nice, but he didn't see, I guess, anything particularly interesting.
Dickens wrote about a city bursting at the seams.
Some unfinished buildings and improvements seemed to intimate that the city had been overbuilt in the ardor of going ahead.
He stayed at the original Galt House, which was then at 2nd and Main.
He said it compared to the finest hotels in Paris and London. We slept at the Galt House, a splendid hotel, and were as handsomely lodged as though we had been in Paris.
Louisville had about 85,000 people in 1842, but it was tight. Our boundary to the east only went to Butchertown, and to the south stopped at Broadway. Forest land surrounded the city, so Dickens would have walked these downtown streets.
Main Street, Market Street, maybe got over to Jefferson.
After one night at the Galt House, another opinion from the famed author.
After breakfast, we devoted to riding through the town, which is regular and cheerful, the streets being laid out at right angles and planted with young trees.
As Dickens killed time in Louisville, he would observe and then write his most famous conclusion about our little town. Quote, "The road was perfectly alive with pigs of all ages." What? Pigs on Main and Market?
Lying about in every direction, fast asleep, or grunting along in quest of hidden dainties.
But Dickens liked our Louisville pigs. "I had always a sneaking kindness for these odd animals." Well, that's about all he liked.
The Dickens Club was a Louisville group.
Despite his digs at the city nearly 20 years later, after the Christmas Carol, the Dickens Club was created by a group in Louisville where they actually held performances of Dickens classics, including this original script preserved by the Filson. You guessed it.
You can see they're taking it right out of the book, and they have it divided by character: Scrooge, the visitor, Tiny Tim. There would have been hundreds of people there. I mean, they probably filled the place up.
As for 1842, after barely 2 days here, the young man couldn't wait to get on his steamboat waiting for him in the Portland neighborhood. Dickens ready to write the final chapter on Louisville.
The city presenting no objects of sufficient interest to detain us on our way, we resolved to proceed next day to another steamboat.
And with that, except for our pigs, we became a footnote in the American tour of the English legend. So I say, see ya, Chuck. Don't let the paddle wheel hit you on the way out. And by the way, Merry Christmas.
Well, I learned a lot more about Charles Dickens' American tour and more about who he came across when he was in Louisville. I've recorded a special Prophet Report podcast about his visit here with historian Jim Holmberg from the Filson Historical Society, and it is ready for you to hear at 6:30 tonight. We're excited about our new podcast, and you can find the one about Charles Dickens by downloading the free WHAS 11 app. And then look for podcasts right there on our front page. You can also find the Prophet Report on Google and Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud. Let us know what you think. Again, Dickens will be there at 6:30.